So we said that all of our avoda, all of our spiritual work to become awakened and enlightened human beings is dependent on Machshava. Machshava means thought. Your thought is everything. Your thought is everything. How you think, what you think, when you think, why you think, everything, and how you sometimes stop thinking, turning off thought. So we said the analogy, we've said this every day, of music in your car. If you don't like the music in the car, what do? You either turn it off or you change it. If you don't like the music in your head, you should either turn it off or change it. That's the key to everything. Turning off the music reveals the quiet, silence. Now the basis of reality is silence. It's only when noises come, someone speaks, car, something, only when noises come, then the silence is broken. But if there's no noise, the actual underlying foundational reality is silence. And everything comes out of silence. I don't know if you've ever been in the desert when it's not windy. A not windy desert. So I walked from the Lebanese border to Eilat. It took 40 days. 19 of those days I was in the desert. Many of those 19 days I was on my own in the desert. And I'd sit on a rocky outlook and I'd look across miles of desert. No wind, silent. I don't know, have you ever heard silence? How often do you hear silence? Actually silence. Almost, probably never, actually. There's always something, a bird, a knock, something. Isn't that crazy? You've never had just silence. Oh, crazy. Which means you've never touched the deepest essence of yourself. Because there's always something in your consciousness. So it's very important to understand that there's something called consciousness. Your consciousness is like a blank screen. Consciousness is a blank screen. And then onto your consciousness gets projected things. Sights get projected onto your consciousness. So I can see all of you here. So that's being projected onto my blank screen of consciousness. And sounds are being projected onto my consciousness. And smells are being projected into my consciousness. And touch is being projected onto my consciousness. And taste is projected onto my consciousness. So I have my five senses. And my five senses is how I experience and interact with the external world. And that's being projected onto my consciousness all the time. And then I also have internal things that are being projected onto my consciousness, like thoughts and emotions, hopes and dreams and memories. So the truth is, just like you've never heard silence, or maybe you have, but you'd have to be in the desert on your own, you've never touched the silence of your own consciousness. You've never just experienced blank screen, soul consciousness. Why? Because there's a constant projection. Your five senses and your internal world. And you can't really turn off your mind. Well, you can, and you need to. But until you do, you've never experienced your pure conscious essence. Isn't that a shame? That's a shame. You're living in the movie. Imagine you got a blank screen. There's a blank screen, but there's always a movie being projected onto the screen. You never get to see the blank screen. So too, you never get to experience the blank screen of your own consciousness. Now, what is that experience? We said it yesterday, and the day before, and the day before, and the day before, and the day before. Once you tap into blank screen of consciousness, what you experience is purity, love, and joy. Purity, peace, love, and joy. But not as an experience from your external world. These aren't Tnuat HaNefesh. It's called Tnuat HaNefesh, which means movements of your soul, emotions. They're not emotions. They are the very essence of your being.
What do you think thoughts were created
so that you can do stuff in the world. You have to have thoughts. I'm not saying you should sit and not have any thoughts.
Is it just for the finite world, or is it also created for...
Beautiful. So thoughts, there's a purpose to thoughts. Two things. One is so you can think really hard, how can I help other people? Or you can think really hard and contemplate very greatly how I can improve myself. Or you can remember to pick up the children from school. So there's a purpose. We need mind. I'm not saying mind's bad. We need mind. But the problem is that mind has taken over. It's become like this parasite that you now identify with. That's what mind has become. Now you identify with mind now rather than pure consciousness onto which mind is projected. So you've fallen into the movie of your own mind, of your own psyche. So you've forgotten that actually there's a pure consciousness behind that. But then there's a higher use for mind. Mind also can be a major stepping stone to connecting to Hashem. Because you can start using a Jewish meditation technique called hitbonenut, which means contemplation, which means you're using your mind consciously. This is not turning off the music, this is choosing the music. So now you can just think, wow, there's a creator of the universe. Even that simple thought. You can think of all the amazing things all the wondrous things that happen in the world. You can think about your hands and your eyes. You can think about things you're grateful for. So you can actually use your mind to arouse experience, good experience, God-conscious experience. So that's a very, very, very good use for mind. So we said it yesterday, I think, or the day before. There's always two levels. There's the creating and the revealing. You can create joy by having positive thoughts. Or you can reveal your essential joy by clearing your thoughts. You can create love by thinking about all the wonderful things about the other person. Or you could reveal love by taking away your mind, and that's what's behind. Do you know what's behind your mind? Behind your mind is love and joy. That's what's behind there. So if you can just get behind your mind or above your mind, then you can experience love and joy. Or you can use your mind to experience love and joy. So the first one, the essential one, is a deeper, unconditional love and joy. And the second one's conditional love and joy, which is also great, by the way. Now, what most people are doing with their minds, they're not conscious, but they're thinking about all their issues and problems and what people think of them. And so the mind is just running and you're just drowning in the mind. So he said yesterday, he says in the book, that our two major problems are, and we did the last one yesterday, is that we don't have passion. We're not passionate anymore. We're like going through life, we got our struggles. When you're a kid, you're very passionate, you want to save the world. But then you lose your passion. And then you get passionate about video games. You get passionate about video games and food and stuff, which isn't real passion, it's a very animalistic type of passion. So we've lost passion. Very few people are alive. How many people do you walk around and you sing, they're like, that person's alive. Everyone's getting by, they're fine, nice people. They're just getting by. I'm okay. And there's very little passion left in the world. And the second one, he says today, the second real problem is that by nature, we don't have strong thought. We don't have mindfulness by nature. When you were 3 years old, did your parents sit you down and do meditations with you? They read you a bedtime story, that's very good, but did they ever sit down and say, hey, just breathe through your nose? Just breathe through your nose. It's very rare that would ever happen. Did you ever learn that in school? Did you do mindfulness and meditation work in school? The answer is no, because most of the world is very much changed now in this generation, actually. But most of the world are just not conscious, very low conscious living. And you can see how we treat the environment and how we treat each other. And it's just, we're poisoning ourselves and the world around us. But no one ever said to me when I was a kid, there's something called meditation, there's something called mindfulness, there's something called a mind, and there's something called consciousness, and this is how you can start controlling. No, I learned history and geography and maths. Useless. Not completely useless, but didn't help me in my life. So it's just not something that people are aware of. No one's speaking about that. My children, since they were born, I'm like, okay, breathe, it's okay. What thought my daughter, I tell this story 1,000 times a week, when she was about 4, she said, Abba, my Yetzer Hara, my negative mind told me not to share my toys with Binyamin. That's her younger brother. But I didn't listen to it, and I shared them anyway. It's unbelievable. How does she, A, even know what a Yetzer Hara is? Well, I taught her what it is. But B, then be able to identify which of the voices in her head is Yetzer Hara. But then C, not identify with it and say, well, that's me, and I'm bad for having that, or I deserve to have that. She completely just disidentified it from it and said, that voice in my head, which isn't me, is my Yetzer Hara's voice. I'm just not going to listen to it. And she didn't. Binyamin did it as well when he was, last year, when he was 9. I dropped some money on the floor and we picked it up, and then he found 10 shekels. And he gave it back to me and said, Abba, here's your 10 shekels. I said, thanks. He said, I just want to tell you that when I first saw the 10 shekels on the floor, my Yetzer Hara told me to take it and buy an ice cream. But I didn't. I'm not going to do that. That's not the right thing to do. So I just gave it back to you. Amazing. It's amazing to be able to identify the voices in your head and say, which ones do I want to identify with? There's something called, you've got to identify them, but then you have to identify with which ones you want to identify with. And the other ones, just let them go. I think it gets harder as you get older. We'll see. And then people always ask me for parenting advice, and I say, I don't have teenagers yet. I don't know. No. But this is a major, major, major issue. The world around us isn't conscious of mindfulness. It's not a thing. Now, it should be taught in every school. Nowadays, by the way, it is. It's $1 billion industry that I'm trying to tap into, by the way. I need some money. But now people are starting to become more mindful. Do you know who is mindful like this? Every single Thai child. Because they each have a temple in their village. Every Thai village has a temple, and they see the monks meditating, and it's just part of their life. Every kid knows what meditation is. Even if they don't do it, even if they don't become from Buddhists, everyone's aware of something called calming and controlling your mind, and we're just not. So it's just not a thing. And then if you start talking about it, people are like, oh, you're a hippie, that's what it is.
That's why you're married to Buddhists, is supposed to spend at least 3 months in a temple. Anyone from Thailand?
Yes, everyone from Thailand basically spent 3 months. It's like a bar mitzvah. They go when they're 13, shave their head. But the problem is, I think like some Jews, they don't really want to be there. They're sitting in those, I know that, they're sitting in those temples like smoking cigarettes and being like, I don't want to be here. So then I would go into the temples and teach them. I was always into Kiruv. I was makaraving Buddhism before. But I would go and teach in the temples, and they'd be like, oh my goodness, wow, there is something here. But for lots of them, it's just like some obligation they have to do to get merit for their family. That's why they're going. They're going because if you be a monk, you get merit for your family, and then their crops will be better and stuff like that. But I did lots of work in temples. I was sitting at the front like this. I was like, do you know what it means to breathe? Consciousness, without. Fine. And they're all doing the chants, and the chants are very beautiful. I still remember them all. I'm not going to say them. But to sit in the morning as the sun is rising and just chant. Very powerful. And that's what Shachris is meant to be. It isn't for most people, and it's very hard to be because it's very long. It's one very long chant. If you could, it says in the Shulchan Aruch, say less and mean it rather than say more and not mean it. So don't try and say all the words and just mumble them all. Rather take one thing and say it over and over again, mean it. So if you could do that, one day, of course, you're going to be davening at Nates. That's obviously a goal. Not yet. It's a goal of yours to be davening, to get up before sunrise. Mikey? Obviously. Like, why wouldn't you? So it's a goal of yours to get up before sunrise and to, as the sun is rising, be saying like Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And then just sit with that and breathe with that, Shema Yisrael. Most people are like, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu. But it's not meant to be like that. It's meant to be breathe. You have to breathe. Before any word of prayer that you say, or at least any verse, you need to breathe deeply through your nose if you want to mean it. Shema. I once ran this meditation session, and there are actually 3 major meditative sounds. And this is also written in the Zohar, but also in non-Jewish sources. There's the sound shh, and that's like white noise. That's what you do for babies. Some people have white noise to make their babies go to sleep. Shh. The second major meditative sound is that's where they get from. Is amen without the nun. They missed the 50th level. They missed out the nun, but whatever. It's a good start. So there's and then the last meditative sound is it's very release. That sound releases everything. And you'll see non-Jewish sources that speak about these 3 sounds, and the Zohar does. Shh. Shema. Shema Yisrael Hashem. That's where we get it from. So, if your Shema isn't a palpable, mindful, experiential, conscious feeling, then you missed it. You're not a bad person, by the way, but you missed it. You missed it. And if you're not breathing through your nose before saying it, you got no chance. Why? Because breathing through your nose connects you to a deeper place within yourself, a calmer place within yourself, the consciousness in yourself, to your neshama. And from your neshama, you can really say Shema. Shema Yisrael. So we're so far from that consciousness, even religious people. It's like, I'm just so far from that. But you don't have to worry, because you can build it. והרי זה, כמו שנאמר לבעל שכל קטן, חדש דבר חוכמה, שאי אפשר לו מפני מום טבעו לא שכל קטן, ומפני חסרון טבעי, זה לא די. Whatever. Basically it's saying that it's like going to someone, a very dim-witted person, and trying to tell them something, and they just look at you and they're like, what? You've got something very profound you want to share, and they're just very dim, and they're like, what? So most people nowadays, when you start talking about mindfulness, they're like, what? I am my mind. That is my reality, that's my existence. Maybe I can train my mind. But to actually talk about it, they just don't even get it. We often use the example of a blind person and colours. A blind person cannot grasp what colours are if they were blind from birth. For many, many people, they're so detached from any higher level of consciousness that even the idea of such a thing, they're like, I just don't get it. I don't know what you're talking about. And he says, however, you have these powerful people who have strong thought, who started to train their thought, to be aware of what's going on in your mind. Not in some weird OCD way, like, well, I think you're over-analyzing. And the other, opposite, really. Just you've purified your mind where you're not thinking so much and you're not overthinking, so it's more clear when a thought comes into your consciousness, you can say, oh wow, that's my Yetzer Hara, and I'm not going to listen to it, and I'm going to share my toys with Binyamin. But what we're meant to do, people with strong mindfulness, we have an immensely important faculty of our consciousness, and it's called Dimyan. Have you heard of Dimyan? Dimyan means imagination. Imagination is immensely, immensely powerful, and therefore can be immensely abused. Immensely abused. Dimyan is thought without words. It's thought in pictures. Imagination is pictures rather than words. And it's more powerful than words. How do we know this? In another book, Haksharas Avrechim, he says an amazing example. Let's say someone insults you today, and you get very upset by that. and 3 days later you go over what he said to you. So you get upset again. But imagine then you also imagined his face saying it to you, you'd be even more upset. Once you have a picture of it, it becomes more real. Therefore, Dimyon could be one of our greatest tools. For example, when you're standing in Shemona Esrei and you're talking about rebuilding the temple, to imagine that you are literally mamish standing in the temple. What would that be? What smells would there be? What noises? The Levi'im all playing music. People singing, chanting, and the sun on your face, and this palpable feeling of Kedusha and holiness. That's an amazing use of Dimyan. And it used to be that we'd lost the power of Dimyan. Back in the shtetl, we didn't have it anymore. This generation, this is the one good thing about special effects and AI, I think we've regained our power of Dimyan just because we see so many movies with crazy special effects that we have got a powerful, but we completely misuse it. We're not imagining holy things, we're imagining sex and violence and fulfilling my desires, and so that's why Dimyon can be immensely dangerous, because it's so powerful to arouse emotion and if it's misused, if it's misdirected, that's very, very dangerous. But if it's used in the right way, then it's much powerful than word thoughts. And he says, he always refers to us as Bnei Nevi'im. The Jewish people, we are Bnei Nevi'im, we are the sons of prophets. Amazing. We are the sons of prophets. You know what Yeshayahu was seeing? And Yechezkiel was seeing? Angels, the rebuilding of the temple. That's who we come from. Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, David HaMelech, Yosef HaTzadik, Yeshua ben Nun. That's our family. Do you understand that? When we say you have Zchut Avot, which means the merit of our forefathers, it doesn't just mean that Hashem remembers what they did for him, brought his name into the world, therefore he's nice to us. Like, for example, if someone knocks on your door and says, I'm so-and-so's grandson, and that so-and-so happened to have saved your life, you're going to look after that grandson because you owe it to his grandfather. So one meaning of Zchut Avot, merit of our forefathers, is Hashem owes it, so to speak, to the forefathers. But another one is that we have their spiritual DNA. We have the DNA of Avraham Avinu. We have the Chesed of Avraham Avinu. We have the Gevurah of Yitzhak. We have the Tiferes of Yaakov. We have this. That's part of who we are. So if you're using your dimyon, your imagination, to imagine silly little things, it's such a shame, because do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? It says in Yeshayahu, Amech kulam tzadikim. We are all essentially tzadikim, perfectly pure, awakened, righteous, enlightened individuals. We're just not using our minds properly. Did you have a question, Mikey?
It was, I don't know if it's appropriate for the class. But
Great. So,
we'll discuss it after.
Brilliant. I love your questions, but none of them are appropriate for the classes. Your dimyon's too strong here, Mikey. It's beautiful. Now, but he keeps saying this over and over again. Kol echad lefi matzavo. Everyone according to their level. So you do your best. He says this often because now I've just spoken about some lofty things. We should be having lofty thoughts. And in general, people aren't having lofty thoughts. But then you can feel a bit like, oh, I'll never get there. I'm overwhelmed. It's too much. Who could do that all the time? And so he keeps saying, no. According to where you are, it's a process. Just try a little bit. In today's mincha, when we talk about Uvanei Yerushalayim, take a minute, a second, not a minute, that's a long time. Take 10 seconds, breathe very deeply, and imagine the Beit HaMikdash. Now we're mamish standing opposite. If there's one place in the world to daven mincha, to imagine you're standing by the Beit HaMikdash, this has got to be it. So just take a minute before you say Baruch Atah Hashem Bnei Yerushalayim. Is that what we say? Before you do that, take a breath and be like, wow. Just imagine the temple. Imagine it. Imagine standing there. And then it means when you ask for it, you're asking from a deeper place, from within yourself. I really want this. This is an amazing experience. So, our first problem we spoke about yesterday is we have lack of passion. Our second is we're just naturally not mindful or conscious human beings. And we never arouse ourselves. Hitlavut, mitlahev. In this page alone it says the word litlahev 1,000 times, which means inspired enthusiasm. We're not alive, we're not awake. And how do we wake ourselves up? Dimyan. Thinking, imagining lofty thoughts, and that then brings the whole rest of our being, all our levels of consciousness, up into a higher level. And then we're literally walking around looking at the world with completely different eyes. Bezat Hashem. Shabbos.